Hello there, Dan the Weatherman here. Hey, welcome to my weather show. This is the global edition where I take a look at everything going on around the globe. And it has been one wild week of weather. Take, for instance, across parts of Europe, that devastating wind damage you've seen. Look at this, of course, and all down to very, very active Atlantic depressions. But these things are slightly different. It's not just wind. This particular one, we were talking sting jets, and you go, ooh, what on earth is that? You look at the swirl of cloud from this particular weather system, and you think of all of a sudden warm air coming in, cold, dry air, mixing it round, and all of a sudden Mother Nature gets the whole storm going, and then loses it and drops out a pretty nasty sting in the tail, and that's exactly what it is. Like a scorpion, like that, wrapping through with that zone of strong, damaging winds across parts of the British Isles. With that working through, there's the center of the depression. It barreled its way in. Winds were 70, 80 miles an hour, and in some places across the southern parts of England, the needles 122 miles per hour, 200 kilometers per hour, potentially the strongest wind gusts ever recorded across parts of Britain. You think, well, how on earth do you get something like that so strong? Mother Nature had her foot way down on the climate extremes pedal this week once again. More warmth into the atmosphere, more oomph in the atmosphere, and of course you have to go back several days to look at the cause. This winter, of course, the polar vortex has been very active cold. That's caused by the deep, dark, deep freeze with no sunlight across the poles during the winter. Across parts of the eastern parts of the Pacific, you had the big zone of high pressure, warm air, that was surging north. So you've got warm, you've got cold. That creates a change, a gradient, and in that gradient, that creates stronger winds. So you start with a little piece of energy right there where the red is, and then watch what happens. This thing churns its way south, barrels down the jet stream, and then, of course, it moves across the warmer seas, warmer than normal, of the Atlantic, and then boom, whoosh, off it goes. Follow that red there. The low deepens, rapid cyclogenesis, and then bang, with those damaging winds, and of course, all of that spreading into northern and western parts of Europe. We go into this week, things quieten down somewhat, but think of like a big conveyor belt at the supermarket. Everything will just shift along. So what has been very, very active weather here, that will continue across the Atlantic, but pointing out one thing, you see a big bend there. That's over parts of Siberia. That will churn through, and if I put this into motion, watch what happens with that kink there. That will move through. That zone of red there will be a very good push moving across the northern Pacific. That will send the rich, warmer air into Alaska, and at the same time, by the end of the week, we get that jet stream kicking in to the western parts of the US. That'll bring wind, rain, snow. They've been very dry there. You can see the flat bit there, still the zone of stronger winds, so that means more active depressions into western parts of Europe as we go through the course of the week. But that same storm system, that will of course help bring some colder weather as well across parts of North America. Look at these cold waves because of the active vortex. This particular one here will surge its way south through Tuesday and Wednesday. Look at that blue, straight south, like a layer of treacle on a pudding, spilled, and that'll head all the way down to parts of Texas. That's cold. Remember that warmth into Alaska? Check that out. Some 20, 30 degrees warmer than normal with the ridge moving through, but that zone of cold, you'll get further surges of cold, but look at the warmth too there, moving into parts of Siberia. I mentioned the snow. Snow for Tuesday and Wednesday, another storm system there with active storms on the bottom edge across the southeastern parts of the US. Blue, of course, snow, wintry mix in the middle. That's your first storm. Another one comes later in the week. This guy here, same thing, with a good dumping easily. Half a foot to a foot or better in some places where you see those darker blues. That churns through. And remember as well, I mentioned later in the week, the jet stream finally arrives in the western parts of the US. Finally some rain after what has been a very, very dry last several weeks with that big upper ridge keeping all the rain away. That's how it looks there for much of Europe. We still keep with the active weather, not as bad, but we keep the stream of systems coming in from the Atlantic, and some of them still containing that wet and windy weather. Look at that. That's the first one through the course of the week. Interesting thing with that hits the Mediterranean and boom, off it goes like a top. developing a deep system there into parts of the eastern Mediterranean. That could have some snow to parts of the hills of Greece and also Turkey. That will churn through. A couple of breaks in the action over Western Europe by the end of it, but still staying rather unsettled as we go along. That's the weather for now.